Bangkok, Thailand, February 1971. Lumpinee Stadium is the most sacred ground in Muay Thai. It has been standing since 1956 on the Rama 4 Road in the heart of Bangkok, and in the 15 years since it opened, it has become something that most sporting venues never become. Not just a place where competitions happen, but a place that has accumulated meaning, that carries in its structure and its atmosphere the weight of everything that has happened inside it. Champions have been made here. Careers have ended here. The specific, particular quality of Lumpinee on a fight night, the smell of liniment and incense, and the food vendors along the outer walls, the sound of the Pifat orchestra that plays throughout the bouts in a tradition that dates back centuries, the particular roar of 3,000 people who understand exactly what they are watching, is unlike anything else in the sport. Tonight is not a championship night. Tonight is something rarer. Tonight is a demonstration evening, one of the irregular events that the stadium organizes when it wants to show visitors and dignitaries something beyond the standard card of professional bouts. The evening has been arranged by a liaison between the Thai Sports Authority and a cultural exchange program that has brought a small group of international martial arts figures to Bangkok for the week. 3,000 people have come. They fill the concrete stands on four sides of the ring, the familiar arrangement of Lumpinee, the fighters section to the west, the general admission packed close along the north and south, the reserved seats to the east where the dignitaries and the press and the international visitors sit in the relative comfort of chairs that do not quite match the ambient atmosphere of the building, but that serve their purpose. In the front row of the reserved section, in a chair near the aisle, sits a man in dark civilian clothing. He is 5 feet 7 inches tall. He weighs 143 pounds. He is 30 years old. He has been in Bangkok for 4 days, making a film that will become The Big Boss, the film that will change everything, the film that is in the process of being made by a man who does not yet know it is about to change everything. He is here tonight because the production coordinator suggested it, and because he is, in any city he visits, interested in watching serious practitioners of any physical discipline. And Muay Thai is a discipline he has studied in principle, but never watched at the level of Lumpinee on a demonstration evening. His name is Bruce Lee. Nobody in the building knows this. Not the 3,000 spectators, not the promoters, not the fighters preparing backstage, not the woman who is currently in the ring, warming up for the central demonstration of the evening. Not yet. Nong Mai is 26 years old. She has been fighting professionally since she was 17, 9 years in a sport that, in 1971, does not officially recognize female competition, and that she has practiced and competed in through the particular combination of exceptional capability and personal will that produces, occasionally, people who make the official framework irrelevant by simply being too good to ignore. She is called the Iron Rose. The name was given to her by a Bangkok sports journalist who saw her fight for the first time in 1966 and wrote a piece in which he said she moved like a flower and hit like metal. The piece was widely read. The name stuck. She has spent 5 years demonstrating through 70 consecutive professional victories that the metaphor was not inaccurate. Her record, 70 fights, 70 victories, 43 finishes. The 27 opponents she did not finish before the final bell, she defeated so decisively on points that the margins were, in the recollection of the judges who scored them, not particularly close. She is the most accomplished female Muay Thai practitioner in the history of the sport to this point. She is also, and this matters for understanding what happens next, someone whose relationship with crowds is specific and informed by experience. She knows what 3,000 people at Lumpinee look and sound and feel like. She has fought here 6 times. She knows how to read the room, how to read the specific energy of the crowd at different moments, how to work with it, and how to manage it. She is warming up in the ring. She is throwing combinations into the air, not hard, not competitive, but with the technical precision of someone who has been doing this since she was a teenager and for whom the movement is as automatic as breathing. She is watching the crowd. She is reading the room. She sees the man in the front row. She sees him the way fighters notice things, quickly, completely, without lingering. She notes the size, the posture, the quality of attention. She notes that he is watching her with a specific quality of focus that is different from the rest of the crowd. Not the tourist attention of someone watching something exotic, not the casual attention of someone who is there for the occasion rather than the discipline. He is watching the way practitioners watch. She is curious. She says something to the promoter who is standing near the ring. The promoter shakes his head. He does not know who the man is. She says something else. The promoter nods. She walks to the edge of the ring. If you love Bruce Lee stories, like this video and subscribe. New stories every single day. What happens next has been described by several people who were in the reserved section that evening. Members of the cultural exchange delegation, a Thai sports journalist named Somchai, who has written about it twice in subsequent decades, and the promoter himself, who gave an account in an interview conducted in 1994. Nong Mai reaches the edge of the ring nearest the front row of the reserved section. She looks at the man in the dark civilian clothing in the aisle seat. She says in Thai at a volume that carries to the rows nearby, "You watch like a fighter." The Thai members of the delegation translate quickly for the international visitors. The man looks up at her. He says, in English, "You fight like one." A sound moves through the nearby section, the particular sound of people who have heard something that has upgraded their assessment of the next few minutes. She looks at him. She says, "You practice something?" He says, "Yes." She says, "What?" He says, "Kung Fu, mostly?" She looks at him for a moment. She says, and here the various accounts agree on the essential content, though they vary in the exact phrasing. Something to the effect of, "Kung Fu is beautiful. Muay Thai is real. Come show me the difference." She says it with the direct, unmalicious confidence of a champion who is not trying to humiliate someone, but who is genuinely interested in the comparison. The professional curiosity of someone who has spent 9 years testing her system against every available opposition and who has not yet met a Kung Fu practitioner who changed her assessment of the comparison. The crowd nearby has gone quiet in the specific way that crowds go quiet when something better than what they came for is about to happen. The man in the dark civilian clothing looks at her for a moment. He looks at the ring. He looks back at her. He stands up. He says, "All right." He removes his jacket. He folds it over the seat. He walks to the ring steps. 3,000 people who do not yet know what they are watching begin to understand that they are watching something. The 5 seconds that followed have become, in the accounts that have been told and retold about that evening, the most frequently described and most consistently documented moment of the night. Not the exchange that came after. The longer demonstration, the full encounter that lasted nearly 8 minutes and that produced in its course the specific evolution of understanding that both participants and all 3,000 witnesses carried away from Lumpinee that night. The 5 seconds. The 5 seconds between Nong Mai assuming her fighting stance and the moment she stopped moving. She assumed the guard that had won 70 fights, the high hands, the weight on the back foot, the specific physical configuration of a Muay Thai champion in her stance, which is not decorative and is not formal, but is the accumulated, refined, tested product of 9 years of professional combat. Every angle of her guard was there for a reason. Every weight distribution was optimal for the techniques that Muay Thai had developed over centuries as its primary weapons: the elbows, the knees, the teep, the roundhouse kick thrown from the hip with the shin as the striking surface. She looked at Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was not in a stance. He was standing in the loose, weight-forward posture that anyone who had watched him before recognized, and that Nong Mai, seeing it for the first time, assessed quickly and professionally, reading the gaps in the guard, the angles of attack that the posture created, the specific vulnerabilities that the absence of a formal stance produced. She threw the teep. The teep is the straight push kick of Muay Thai. The foundational technique, the measuring tool, the strike that Muay Thai fighters use to establish distance, control the center, and set up everything else. It is fast. It is powerful. It is the first thing a Muay Thai fighter throws when they need to understand what they are working against. Nong Mai's teep was, by the estimates of the practitioners in the crowd who could evaluate what they were seeing, technically impeccable. It found air. Bruce Lee was not where the teep was aimed, not by a dramatic evasion, not by a leap or a roll, or any of the large-scale movements that telegraphed evasion and could be anticipated. By the small, early, economical movement that had defined his encounters with every serious practitioner who had attempted to reach him, the movement that was already completed before the technique arrived, that put him outside the line of the teep by the minimum margin required. Nong Mai reset. She threw the roundhouse kick, the signature technique of Muay Thai, the kick thrown with the shin from the hip that carries, when thrown by a champion, a force that the martial arts world has measured and found to be among the highest generated by any kick in any striking art. The roundhouse found air. Bruce Lee was to her outside. His right hand was at her left elbow. Not a grip, not a strike, a touch. The lightest possible contact. The kind of contact that carries information. Nong Mai stopped. She stood still for 5 seconds. 3,000 people did not breathe. If you love Bruce Lee's stories, like this video and subscribe. New stories every single day. The next 8 minutes were a conversation, not a fight. Not a demonstration in the conventional sense of one person showing another person what they can do. A conversation, the specific exchange that happens between two serious practitioners when they have each recognized that the other has something they do not have, and that the most valuable thing they can do with the next 8 minutes is try to understand what it is. Nong Mai asked questions with her body. She threw techniques, not competitively, not with the intention of landing, but with the genuine technical quality of a champion testing a principle. She threw the teep again from different angles. She threw the roundhouse from both sides. She threw the elbow from the clinch range that Muay Thai favored. She threw the knee. None of them found their target. And Bruce Lee showed her each time where he was, not as a lesson, not as a correction, but as the answer to the question she was asking. He showed her the movement, the timing, the specific quality of reading that made each technique's arrival late by the margin required. At the end of 8 minutes, she sat down on the ring canvas. Not defeated, not exhausted, thinking. Bruce Lee sat across from her. The 3,000 people in the building had been completely silent for 6 of those 8 minutes. The Thai sports journalist Somchai, who was in the press section and who had been taking notes throughout, would write later that in 23 years of covering Muay Thai at Lumpinee, he had never heard the building go quiet the way it went quiet that night. He wrote, "The crowd did not go quiet because nothing was happening. The crowd went quiet because everything was happening, and they understood collectively that the noise of their response would interfere with their ability to see it." Nong Mai said to Bruce Lee, "What are you reading?" He said, "Your intention. Before the technique, there is the decision. Before the decision, there is the intention. I watch for the intention." She said, "And you can see it?" He said, "Mostly. I am still learning to see it more completely." She looked at him. She said, "Who taught you this?" He said, "No one. I am still teaching myself." She nodded slowly. Then she said something that Bruce Lee mentioned to the film's production coordinator later that evening, and that the production coordinator wrote down because it struck him as worth writing down. She said, "You fight like water." He looked at her. He said, "That is exactly what I'm trying to do." She stood up. She looked at him for a long moment. She bowed. Deep. Deliberate. The bow that Muay Thai gives when it recognizes something worth recognizing. Bruce Lee bowed in return. 3,000 people came to their feet. Nong Mai continued her career for another 4 years, retiring undefeated in 1975 with 89 professional victories. People who trained with her in those 4 years described a change in her practice that became visible in the months after Bangkok. Not a change in her techniques, which were already excellent, but a change in what she was trying to understand through her techniques. A new emphasis on reading, on the gap between the opponent's intention and the opponent's action, on what was available in that gap to someone who had learned to see it. She described this change in an interview conducted in 1983 as the result of 8 minutes in a ring with a man she had never seen before and never saw again. She said, "He showed me that I had been practicing Muay Thai. I had not been practicing how to see Muay Thai." The difference between those two things is the difference between good and excellent. He was excellent. I understood that night what I needed to do to close the distance. She paused. She said, "The Iron Rose. That is what they called me. Iron because I was strong. But strength is not the highest thing. He showed me the highest thing. He was water. Be water." 3,000 people in Lumpinee Stadium watched an undefeated champion call out a quiet stranger in the front row. The stranger stood up, removed his jacket, folded it over his seat, and walked to the ring steps. 5 seconds later, 3,000 people forgot how to breathe. Not because of what he did, because of what he was, because the principle was not a technique and the water was not a metaphor, and the thing she called him out to demonstrate turned out, in 8 minutes on the most sacred ground in Muay Thai, to be the most complete thing any of them had ever seen. She called him a stranger. She found out what he was. She bowed. 3,000 witnesses. Not one of them forgot. If you love Bruce Lee stories, like this video and subscribe. New stories every single day.